In this segment, we want to kind of give y'all a more in-depth dive into recent movies, TV shows, maybe some video games or books here and there, but just in the entertainment space, something that gives us the opportunity to go into some of these projects that we enjoy watching in more depth and detail than we were able to do on our normal streams. So um, we're going to jump in tonight and kind of give this a trial run and see how it goes. But I'm really excited to do this with y'all. And so just hang in there with us as we um, kind of give this a shot and feel things out. But we're just going to jump right into it. But before we do, if you enjoy what we do on this channel, please give us a like, subscribe, share, comment. Let us know what you think about how we're doing. We really enjoy what we do, but we couldn't do it without your support. So um, anything that you can do to help us out would be much appreciated. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. And today we're actually going to be talking through the most recent Disney Lucasfilm project called Skeleton Crew. As you know, if you've watched our channel in any extent, we're big Star Wars fans, and we like to we watch everything basically coming out that is Star Wars related. So um, this one obviously is a bit unique in the sense that it is a more targeted towards kids. I'd say outside of some of the animated stuff, we haven't really had a project like this since probably some of George Lucas's holiday special stuff, or that may be the most recent we've had. So um, it's interesting that this is the one that we got when we got it, because I don't think it's much a secret to anybody that the universe of Star Wars, the fan base, the current landscape has been a bit rocky of late, and that's chalked up to several different factors. But ultimately, this is the project that they chose to give us at this point in the year, and coming off the back of what was largely disappointing reception from their other live action show this year, which is The Acolyte. Um, I think there's a lot riding on this in the sense that they really need something that's a bit of a win for them to sort of level things out. And just coming from my perspective, and before I get into my actual thoughts on the first two episodes, which released a couple of days ago, I want to kind of give you all some background on the production of the show, the timeline, um, some of the people involved with it, and then I'll jump in and actually give my thoughts on what I've thought so far. And but that being said, my expectations going into the show were pretty low because I was expecting, a kid-oriented show, uh, probably not taken quite as seriously as some of your other projects, and so I really went into it with just an open mind and just a very calm and sort of chill approach, where I'm normally a very critical and analytical person. When I watch movies or TV shows, I try to just go into it very light, loose, and laid back, and just try to just see what I thought. And so that kind of lays the groundwork from where I'm coming from when I went into this show. I was not a fan of The Acolyte. I was not a fan of the third season of The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, the Kenobi show. Just a lot of, I just had a lot of disappointment. And outside of, I think, the first two seasons of The Mandalorian, the first season of Andor, Rogue One, I've had a hard time finding a lot to like with what Disney's done with Star Wars. And so that's kind of my perspective, so that y'all can see where I'm at as I approach this, and maybe give y'all a better understanding of sort of where my thoughts align on that. But let's kind of jump in a little bit to the production of the show. And this project was initially announced in May of 2022 at Star Wars Celebration, and then eventually began filming in September of 2022. and they actually finished their filming January 2023. So it's interesting that we get this show December 2nd of 2024, yet it's been finished filming for nearly 2 years at this point. So I did a little bit of digging into why that is, why it took so long for them to put it out. It's kind of fuzzy. There's not a lot of great information out there. The best that I could come to was that there was some comments about, because of the writers and actors strikes that was going on in Hollywood. I guess that was late 2023. It's kind of fuzzy. All that runs together, but around that time, actors were not allowed to do any kind of promotion for their shows. That was just part of how the strike worked. So um, some people think that because of that, they delayed, and this happened obviously with other projects as well, but they delayed the release so that these actors, these directors, and so on and so forth would have the ability to actually market and promote the show before it came out. And so um, that's the best information I've been able to find as to why it was most likely delayed, and it could have just been that they chose other projects like Ahsoka or The Acolyte to greenlight ahead of that, and there just wasn't a good slot for them in 2023. Maybe they just changed their mind on that. I don't know, but that's the best that I've been able to come to in terms of the information that has been given. Um, in terms of who's involved, John Watts and Christopher Ford were the creators of the show. You'll know those guys from. John Watts was the director of the Spider-Man trilogy in the MCU with Tom Holland. So Spider-Man: Homecoming, Spider-Man: Far From Home, Spider-Man: No Way Home. I think Christopher Ford was his sort of like his co-collaborator who worked with him on Spider-Man: Homecoming and some other projects as well. And then it's obviously executive produced by Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, Kathleen Kennedy, and then Colin Wilson, Susan McNamara, and let's see, I'm going to butcher the name. John Bartnicki were the executive producers, and then um, as I dug into the writer or the directors for the individual episodes, John Watts is obviously directing. I believe he's directing the first and the last episode. There's 8 total episodes of the show, and then um, Daniel Kwan and Daniel Schneider, who are, I guess, those of you who are movie buffs or really follow the popular releases in Hollywood would know them from the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was widely successful when it came out. Um, and then David Lowery, who directed Disney's Pete's Dragon and The Green Knight. Um, and then Jacob Schreier, who is the one directing the new MCU Thunderbolts movie. And Bryce Dallas Howard, you would know her some from her acting days. I remember her originally from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, where she played Gwen Stacy. That's the earliest I remember her playing. And then obviously she was in the Jurassic World movies. She's played in some other movies as well. The Help is another movie she's in that's quite good. And but she's also directed episodes of The Mandalorian, episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. She was a prominent actor in the Jurassic World series. But she's pretty accomplished. Obviously, the daughter of Ron Howard, who's a immensely popular director and actor, a former actor. So um, also Lee Isaac Chung, who is most recently known for directing the movie Twisters that came out not that long ago. And then he also directed an episode of The Mandalorian in season 3. And then John Watts obviously was mentioned before that. But and then the writers were John Watts and Christopher Ford, as well as Byung Joe Wesner, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I had to write some of this down because it's hard to remember. But that's what we're looking at in terms of the writers. And then for the score, Mick Giacchino, who is actually the son of Michael Giacchino, you would know him from scores such as Mission Impossible, Jurassic World, Rogue One. He's done some of the scores in the MCU, the Star Trek reboot with J.J. Abrams, and then obviously the Batman. So if his son is anything like him, I think you could expect a lot of good things out of him. And from what I've heard from the score of the first two episodes, I think it's been pretty solid. So, um, but this show was originally pitched as sort of Goonies slash Stranger Things in space, a movie that kind of harkened back to the Spielberg days of the Goonies, E.T., movies like that that really captured this spirit of adventure and wonder for kids and for teenagers and just this, and even for a lot of adults. And so that's really the essence of what they're trying to capture here in this show. And I think it becomes very evident as you watch that is the inspiration. And so I'm going to kind of jump into my initial thoughts on the first two episodes. Like I said before, I haven't generally been a fan of a lot of Disney's projects since they've acquired Lucasfilm. Um, and I went into this with very low expectations, but I try to keep an open mind and be like, maybe this surprises me. Maybe it's something that I gravitate towards, or maybe it's just something that's kind of fun that I can turn my brain off and enjoy. Um, but surprisingly, I was pleasantly surprised by how enjoyable the show was. Um, it's got that sort of, that's that light, um, fun sort of feel to it. That it's not that it doesn't take itself seriously, but it knows what it wants to be, and it doesn't try to be anything different. And so you really you get that sense of that feel of like the ET, um, that Goonies feel, maybe a touch of Stranger Things. It doesn't really have the horror elements necessarily, but you can still get some of that. This idea of these group of kids going on an adventure together, um, and it's obviously not near as dark or violent as Stranger Things can be, and it is more geared towards younger kids, which Stranger Things is not. So, um, but getting into it, we open up with a group of kids on a planet called Aten, and um, we're not told much about the planet, but it's obviously this suburban style planet that is very prosperous. The kids are going to school almost like you would see normal kids today. Um, there's this system of governing that is sort of uh, it gives me some George Orwell 1984 vibes of like, they have these assessment tests where they sort of figure out what field they want to go into. They want to be a mechanic. They want to go into politics or whatever it is, and they test to try to almost be sorted into these different job fields. And so that's kind of where we're at with the main characters, which are Wim, um, Neil, Fern, and KB, which are the four kids that were sort of introduced to early on, and they're kind of going about their lives. And Wim sort of stumbles upon this secret, and it turns out that they've discovered this ship that's been buried under the ground. They accidentally activate it, and it launches them into space, and that's kind of how we're introduced, or how the story kicks itself off in the first episode. And in the second episode, they're kind of carried along unwillingly on this adventure where not only are they far away from home, but they don't even know where their home is in the galaxy. We understand that the planet they're on is very sheltered. They don't have really any contact with the outside world outside of their planet. And so, I don't know, you find a lot of very interesting, there's some interesting tidbits in there that really make you want to keep watching. And so, um, I will say, initial thoughts, visually, I think it looks good, better than some of their previous projects, like Kenobi, Book of Boba Fett. I would say it's on the level of the first couple of seasons of The Mandalorian in terms of the visuals. I mean, nothing that ever really takes me out of it. It looks good. it looks like they've spent their money well there. So I was pleased with that. Um, I thought the child actors did a great job, and I think John Watts, who obviously directed the Spider-Man movies, worked with some younger actors, obviously not kids, but younger actors. I think he understands how to direct that age of kids, and so I think that really shows. And I found myself laughing at a lot of the character moments between the kids. They're very likable characters, and they're all sort of settled into their maybe your typical tropes, like the sort of the naive one, the troublemaker, the smart one, the techie, the tech savvy one, um, but you still have, I don't know, there's just a likable nature to them, and they seem to have good chemistry with each other. So I was really pleased with that. Um, very pleased with because that's always sort of a dicey thing when you go into working with younger kids. Some of them are not, at that age, they're not going to be necessarily be an accomplished actor. Their skills are not necessarily going to be as sharp as they could be. And so I was pleased that was the performance that we got, and I think it gets me excited to see what they can do going forward. Um, the story um, is fairly simple at the onset. Kids find ship accidentally sends them into space, and their adventure begins. There's not much else around that, but as we kind of delve into the story a little bit more, and just for those watching, listening, whatever, there will be spoilers in this, so just beware as you go forward. But we start to learn some interesting things about their planet, where um, this planet is apparently, as they interact with other, they go to this spaceport that's sort of like your Moss Isley. It's not a desert planet, but it's like a Moss Isley esque, where there's a lot of scummy aliens and pirates and bounty hunters around, and they're trying to get directions to get home, and they give this name of their planet, this at, and they kind of get laughed at. And this comment is made by one of the pirates that um, this comment is made by one of the pirates that this is um, that's the name of this mythical treasure planet, essentially, that, like I said, they didn't even believe it existed. And so that's interesting, because I think it starts to explain some of the ways in which um, the kids are, the methods in which they operate. I mean, they don't seem to have any understanding, and we know this series takes place in the same Mandalorian era, so after the fall of the Empire, after Return of the Jedi, and so there doesn't seem to be a lot of indication that these kids and the planet they live on were even aware that there was just this rebellion in this empire. I mean, we find out that one of the kids is using old Republic credits, which were not even the currency during the Empire's reign, and obviously not the currency during the New Republic. So that brings up some interesting questions of, are these old Republic credits like the prequels Republic, or are we talking about the old Republic 1,000 years or more before that Republic? So there's this possibility that this planet has kind of been in isolation for all of these hundreds of thousands of years. And so it brings sort of an interesting dynamic to the story that fleshes it out beyond just the kids being lost in space. And so um, obviously they run into Na Wood, who's played by Jude Law. He's introduced at the very end of the second episode, so we don't really get much with him. Obviously, we know he's some kind of Force user, um, and other than that, there's some really cool pirate costumes. The main pirate is sort of a werewolf-looking creature that I thought looked like. I mean, the guy was in a costume. I thought the costume was really cool. It definitely gives you those vibes, those '80s villains in some of these movies that are maybe a little cheesy, but at the same time, I don't know. It's just kind of a cool thing, and there's also a pretty well done little battle that takes place at the very beginning of episode one between these pirates and another ship, and um, and it looked good. It was well shot. They kind of had some nods to some scenes from the original Star Wars movie, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I think all in all, my impressions of the show are mostly positive, and that was surprising for me as someone who has not easily enjoyed Disney Star Wars projects. And I think it did bring back some nostalgia for me. I mean, it reminded me of movies I grew up watching, like Peter Pan, The Chronicles of Narnia. These adventures where you're whisked off to this faraway place where you're seeing you're seeing the world for the first time. You're seeing the galaxy for the first time, um, and I don't know. There's just like an essence of the original Star Wars in that, where Luke, when he leaves Tatooine, everything is crazy and wonderful and scary all at the same time. And I think that's kind of the vibe that you get here. And so I think in that sense, it's a very Star Wars show. And at the same time, there's a lot of elements in the show that make it feel kind of just generic sci-fi story. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but it's definitely one of those. I think that if you allow yourself to kind of approach it from the lens you would as a 12-year-old kid, I think you'll um, find a lot of enjoyment in it. Um, and so that's kind of where I'm at. If I had to give it a rating so far, I would say it's on the level of a 7.5 to 8 out of 10. Um, and um, Also, I wanted us to kind of look at some of these, see how it's faring critically throughout some of these more well-known rating sites. And so I'm going to pull up um, some of that here so that y'all can kind of get a peek of that. But so as you can see here, Rotten Tomatoes, right now it's sitting at a 95 average tomato meter score for critics, and it's at about 84% average popcorn meter for audience. All critics, it's sitting at 95. Top critics, 86. So all in all, very well received. And then you go over here to IMDb, you're looking at a 7.3 out of 10. And which is still like it's a very positive score. And as we roll over here to Metacritic, we're kind of in that same realm at 71. Obviously, the user score is a little bit lower here, 5.8. But I think all in all, what you're seeing with this show is people are enjoying it, and they're for the most part. And I think it's one of those. It's very inoffensive. It doesn't. It's not going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, because I think it's maybe playing things a little bit more safe, and maybe just going into an area where, because it's not appealing to adults as much as some of the other ones, maybe people are not investing as much into it, or whatever the case may be. But that's kind of where. Kind of my initial thoughts on it. I'm excited to see more. I made the comment to Iskuzel, who obviously is part of our channel here, and Schultz as well, that we've been watching a lot of other shows out recently. Dune Prophecy, we delved into a little bit. We're fans of the Dune movies, the book, and I told him, I said, it's a little bit sad maybe, but I'm actually enjoying Skeleton Crew more than I'm enjoying Dune Prophecy. So if that tells you anything, then, I mean, I guess it depends on how highly you view Dune Prophecy, but that's just kind of where I'm at with it. But something I also want to do on these Full Scale Rebellion segments are end it with a bit of just a content section, where this is just a section for people who want to be aware of the things they're consuming in their content. They want to know what kind of stuff's in it, whether they're letting their kids watch it or it's just for them and they have different things that they want to avoid. This is just a way where we can view something and give you the ability to just check it out before you watch it and know, hey, is this going to be safe or not to for me to view, for my kids to view, or whatever the case may be. And so you can also, if you don't want to be spoiled by any of the review sections, you can come to the end of the video and just view the content side of things. So with this show, obviously, with it being PG and it being oriented more towards kids, I don't remember hearing any profanity at all. Um, Violence is bloodless. There's not a lot of it in the first couple of episodes, but much like other Star Wars content, it's blaster bolts, it's cauterized wounds. They're not bleeding normally, and so I'd say in terms of the profanity, the violent content is definitely um, I would say rated on the low end, um, and low to very low, and then obviously with the sexual content is none. There's none of that in here, so that'd be on the very low end as well. Um, and So I think all in all, obviously I wouldn't recommend you let your 5 and 6 year olds watch it. I wouldn't let mine until they were, well, I mean, 5 or 6, 7 maybe, but I wouldn't let your real young kids sit in front of it because it might be a little bit frightening for some of them. But all in all, I would say this one rates definitely as a low on the terms of the severity of the content. So for those that might be interested in that, um, that's what we want to try to start doing in these segments, is to give you all that the opportunity to see what's going in the content. So um, that's kind of all I have to say so far. I will definitely be back to talk about this show and others. Um, but For now, what I want to do is ask y'all what for those who have seen the show, what have you thought so far? Um, Give us your thoughts on it. I'd love to hear from y'all. Love to dialogue and to discuss some of the things, maybe theorize a little bit about what's coming next. And we're just excited to keep this thing rolling. So yeah, thank you for your support, and thank y'all for watching. And we'll see y'all next time.